Good evening. Tonight, Common Council meeting, Tuesday, October 10th at 6th Street. It is 7:01. Call of order, roll call. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Identify public conflicts of interest, possible conflicts of interest. Any aldermen have any conflicts this evening? Seeing none, public comment period, correspondence. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Any public comments? Any public comments? A third time, any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to item E. Approval of minutes, September 26, 2023, and October 4th, 2023, joint meeting with Fire and Police Commission. Motion by Alderman Giles, second by Alderman Spiros. Any activity? Seeing none, please vote. All ayes, thank you. Staff updates.
All I have tonight is sort of a follow-up from our first meeting, just to let the public know about our upcoming budget meetings. Never too late to get your information in, your thoughts, questions, ideas to our elected officials or to me as city administrator. Our next meeting will be Monday, October 16th at 6 p.m. here in this building. And after that, there'll be meetings on the 24th and the 26th. The 24th at 5 o'clock and the 26th at 6 o'clock. So email, letter, call, let us know what you're thinking. If you're tuned in here, we want to know your ideas and what you want in the budget. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Item G, my comments. Employee recognitions, Jonathan Altman, Fire Department, 15 years. Congratulations, Jonathan. And Keith Pugh, Assessor's Office, 10 years. Congratulations, Keith. We have a second item on, which is proclamation, which we are going to be addressing later in the agenda. And I have one other thing from Governor Evers, has proclaimed October 20th as Community Media Day. On behalf of the City of Marshfield, I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to our communications department and all their outstanding work to inform, educate, and engage our citizens and help make this a better community. Thank you to Tom, David, and all the volunteers who are part of this great effort. Thank you again. Without you, we wouldn't be able to roll forward. Item H, council comments. Seeing Alderman Spiros.
Sorry, my button wouldn't work
okay.
very well. And I apologize for not knowing all this information. But my husband did announce to me that there's going to be somebody recognized at the state level. I asked him, I'm like, is it fire or police? And we got cut off on the phone call. So can anyone elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to announce that one of our officers, Terry Andrews, received the First Responder Award for the 86th District. It was a remarkable feat that he did. He came upon a crash. There was significant injuries, and he was off duty. He was just returning back home and came across the crash and made some heroic life-saving efforts. So he did receive that award. He's pretty modest about it, but he did a great job. So,
Thank you.
And please send our congratulations to him, or if he wants to stop in, we can all shake his hand, but probably not, right? City Administrator's update.
Actually, when I reported about the upcoming budget meetings, I was thinking that was my update, and I got ahead of myself with staff updates, so I really don't have anything more to share tonight.
Excellent, thank you, Steve. Item J, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none, consent agenda, meetings, minutes, and reports. Motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Giles. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes. Thank you. We can take item L off. Action on items removed. Item M, request to approve budget resolution number 19, 2023, continuing appropriations, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Good evening. As part of the year-end processes and to comply with some accounting standards at year-end, in actually November of 2022, we set aside money to pass forward into the 2023 budget for items that were in flight, that were not going to be physically received in 2022. But they should have been part of the 2022 budget. At that time, staff requested $306,000 to be carried forward. What we had since learned, roughly $192,000 of that related to the library, and that's not classified, never have been classified as a committed reserve, but a restricted reserve because statute allows them to carry that forward. So throughout the year, what I did was I looked at these requests, made sure that there was truly budget available to carry forward, that it hadn't been consumed in 2022 for other things, and have come to the conclusion that just $97,972,000 should be carried forward into the 2023 budget. And so with that, I recommend approval of Budget Resolution 19-2023 for the purpose of increasing the budget in accordance with items that were added to your committed fund balance the previous year.
We have a motion by Alderman Spears, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Second reading of ordinance number 1501, amending section 2-0173 of City of Marshfield Municipal Court to provide a request for advisory opinions from the ethics boards, presented by Harold Wolfgram, City Attorney.
Well, this is the second reading of the ordinance that we spoke about last time, which is really just codifying the provisions in the state statutes that allow an ethics board to provide advisory opinions. Those advisory opinions don't just go to staff or public officials, but also those persons that may be doing business with the city and are seeking an advisory opinion. The ordinance outlines the procedure for that and underscores the importance of maintaining confidentiality in regard to those.
We have a motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Giles. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes. Thank you. Second reading of ordinance number 1502, amending section 18-6611, temporary uses farmers market to allow food trucks at farmers markets, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. This is also the second reading of an ordinance that was first presented at our last meeting, similar to the one that the city attorney just covered. This is to allow farmers markets to have food trucks. And I think I mentioned last time, but I'll share it again. Right now, it's not that we don't like food trucks. It's that the current definition of farmers market in our zoning code does not allow for them. It refers to fruit and vegetable stands and other things, but it's not called out as one of the permitted uses within what's called a farmer's market. So this ordinance would correct that by just inserting the proper language to allow food trucks to be part of a farmer's market. This would still leave, as I said last time, the idea of getting the proper license from the city clerk's office, complying with any regulations from the Marshfield Fire and Rescue staff, but it would at least make possible what people, I think, would like to see, which is food trucks allowed in those particular events. So staff would recommend approval of ordinance number 1502.
Motion by Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Weigel. Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. Steve, I was wondering, I brought up at the last meeting, they had a section in here about a owner's signature for the food truck owners, but I didn't see that requirement for the vegetable, fruit vendors. Was there, you said you were going to check into it. I don't know if you came up with anything.
Yeah, I didn't find anything. I know we talked about this in terms of other sign-offs. Do you have something, Jessica?
For any of the events that occur, we require a list from the city clerk's office from the sponsoring organization of all vendors that will be present, so that we can monitor to make sure everyone is licensed appropriately who needs to be licensed, which is actually how this oversight came up.
So this will just apply to them.
It just applies to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes. Thank you. Item P, second reading of ordinance number 1503, updating Marshfield High School and Madison Elementary School Campus Master Plan, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, once again, I'll try and keep my comments short since I went through it in a little bit more detail at the first meeting. But this would be to update the campus master plan for, as was said, the Marshfield Senior High School and Madison Elementary area. And again, the purpose of a campus master plan, and these are for 5 years, are to outline the expected improvements, facility changes, those types of things that we can expect in the coming 5-year period. That helps the city to prepare for if there'd be any public infrastructure needs, and just kind of understand where they're going with their campuses. We do use them for the fairgrounds, the airport, the medical complex, the university, all those type of larger facilities do campus master plans. It gives them some flexibility on zoning when they're ready to move forward to their improvements because they've already called them out and gotten a general blessing. The one issue that really came up at our last conversation was the siting of the cell tower on the east side of the property over by where the pickleball courts are going to be, and did a little bit more checking on that. And it does appear, and the city attorney can comment on this further if need be, but that issue, safety, impact on others, would be addressed at the siting issue when the tower is actually going to be sited at that location, rather than the master plan, where this really just kind of a layout of expected improvements. So there would still be time for review of that and making sure that everything was done properly and wasn't going to be harmful. And that really shouldn't be part of this process tonight, is my understanding.
I mean, to the extent that that had been raised, the campus master plan, you're really looking at general zoning in that setting and what it lays out compared to other zones and the considerations of zoning in general. The methodology or the procedure that's used is the council, when you're approving a campus master plan, is essentially the same as though you're approving a change in the zoning map. The issue about towers, communication towers, that's a separate section under the code. So if they're going to actually move a communication tower at some point, or build a new communication tower, or modify an existing communication tower, those are addressed under section 1862(4)(h) of the code. And then there are certain considerations that have to be made in there. The state statute actually is very restrictive in terms of what types of regulations a municipality can make in regard to the siting of communication towers. And that's why that separate code section is used to address that, rather than sort of a general zoning question, which is what you're dealing with on the campus master plan provision. I don't know if there's additional questions on that. Okay.
Seeing no other comments, please vote. Motion passes. Item Q, request to authorize the Human Resources Director to draft specific changes to policy number 3.510 vacation and 3.526 leave donation for approval by the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee and the Common Council, presented by Sarah Dressel, Human Resources Director.
Thank you. So tonight, as part of my memo, I went through a little bit of the background, but back in August, the Employee Satisfaction Committee did request that Human Resources move forward with presenting basically budget neutral ideas to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. So we did that on September 19th and provided several budget neutral ideas, which did include vacation updates, sick leave conversion, personal holiday increase, birthday off, and volunteer day off. At the close of that presentation, there were several questions, and so we did go ahead with a second presentation that took place on October 3rd. And at that presentation, a motion was made to move forward to bringing forth to Common Council as a whole the following, which would be vacation policy update, sick leave conversion to vacation, and sick leave conversion to donation. So the idea was to bring it forth to this committee for, or this council for review, consideration, and possibly approval to bring it forth to Finance, Budget, and Personnel with policy updates to be approved by that group to bring forth for final approval of this group. So with that, in the memo, I did attach a few documents. It did kind of break down a little bit more what the current policy is versus the proposed policy for vacation. It also updates what it would look like for the sick leave conversion to vacation and the sick leave conversion to donation. So for vacation, as I mentioned in the presentation, we really looked at the surrounding municipalities as far as what they were doing, and then kind of what makes sense as far as what we currently have and what I would say is a little more mainstream, a little bit more what employees are looking for in either a new opportunity for employment, and then also helping with retention. So with that, one of the main places that we looked at was Stevens Point's version. The reason is it was fairly unique. It offers more vacation, but at shorter intervals, so you're not waiting as long to get your next increase. So a little more attractive as far as a new employee that would be looking at moving to us, but also retention for current employees where they'll be able to see more vacation more quickly than waiting, till year 7 or 15 and so forth. Then with the sick leave to donation conversion, that really is looking at our current policy where you can donate. Right now, you can only donate vacation or personal holiday days. This would allow you to convert up to 24 hours of sick leave as a donation to an employee who is making a request. So that would be someone who maybe had just something out of the blue happen where they are exhausting all of their leave time and basically would have to go without pay. So the process really is they make a request to Human Resources. We put out information to all employees, and then employees can choose to donate or not to donate. So we have had to do this in the past. It's very successful. We generally always get a lot of questions though around whether or not we can utilize sick time for that. Again, in the past, we have said no. It was suggested that we add sick time in, so that is part of this proposal. We would just be basically following the same rules that we have been doing for vacation or personal holiday time, but we would just be adding in that sick time as well. And then finally, it would be an additional change to the vacation policy, which would be adding the possibility to convert some sick leave to vacation on an annual basis. So again, this was something that Stevens Point does that I thought was unique and a way to utilize sick leave. And basically there are rules around it. An employee has to have 5 years or more of service. They can convert up to 6 days of vacation annually, but they cannot fall below 10 days of sick time as their overall bank at the time that they make the request for that conversion. We would put some timing around a yearly request that they could put through. And then if they did decide to end their employment, but let's say they have 3 of the 6 days left that they haven't used, those would not be paid out days. Those would just be, it's a use it or lose it type of thing on an annual basis. So at this time, staff is recommending that Common Council authorize the creation and or updating of policies for vacation and sick leave as outlined to bring to Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for final review and approval by Common Council. And I can certainly answer any questions that you might have.
I have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman O'Reilly. Alderman Stauber.
Thank you, Sarah. I like the presentation. I like the content. I'm curious, the items probably weren't specifically called out as a request during the survey. So my question is, at some point during the development of this recommendation, Did you kind of test the waters and ask employees, hey, what do you think if, or what if that? And what kind of response did you get? I mean, what I'm trying to avoid is implementing something that maybe doesn't have the value that we hope it has.
Yeah, so even before the survey, I had started to speak with first department heads and department and division heads as well, just around the idea of updating vacation. It's been brought up by this group on occasion as well, and specifically often by the finance, budget, and personnel group because of requests that we have to bring forth when we have new employees, new hires, and things like that. So that's kind of where it started, and then the survey came out. It was a hot topic on the survey as far as additional vacation, things like that, as far as comments go. So once we got to the point where we had completed the survey and we had already kind of started to look at the overall vacation policy, and we started to kind of do a deep dive into the research of what other municipalities were doing, we tweaked the policy a little bit as like kind of a draft, and then have had additional conversations with department heads and have asked them to reach out to their employees. So I've actually received quite a few comments after every presentation that has happened with the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. And overall, I think very, very positive, very much we really hope it moves forward, but overall, a lot of excitement, I would say.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just want to say thank you for all the work you put in. I knew when we got involved with this, it was going to be quite a tedious task, and you guys did a wonderful job. It's appreciated, and I think the employees would appreciate it too.
Thank you.
Any other comments? And Sarah, thank you. Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you again, Sarah. Request to approve resolution number 2023-56, opposing declawing procedures performed on cats within the city of Marshfield, presented by Brian Giles, Council Member, District Number 7.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your packet, you will notice I included language for a resolution to oppose cat declawing within the city limits. Last month, an ordinance to ban cat declawing was voted down. As I alluded to, some animal caregivers were disappointed by that vote, and I've brought forth this resolution as an alternative. So I'm asking to adopt it and vote on it tonight. Thank you.
We have a motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Tompkins. Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. I guess the only question I have is, what is the resolution? Is it just a show of support for this, or is there any other recourse? Or I would just like clarification for everyone that might be watching.
Sure. It's strictly a resolution, basically to say that the council has been educated that cat declawing is an elective surgery. It can be inhumane, it can cause pain, and it also can cause behavior issues in many instances. So it's basically just hoping to maybe draw some more education, get more interest from people. If another local community looks to research it a little more, I think that would be worth it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, please vote. Passes. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on that, Brian, also. Debrief from the October 4th meeting on possible relocation of the police department. Identify additional information desired from staff or the project consultant, and discuss next steps in the process, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. It was only a few days ago we gathered in the 2nd Street Community Center with members of the Fire and Police Commission. Staff was there as well, and I think we might have had a couple of citizens in the audience. And it had a great presentation from staff from ADCI, the ones who did the feasibility study on relocating the police department to the former Buffalo building, as we call it. And I really didn't want to see any time go by, and advised to the fact that the party who's looking to donate the property to the city, isn't far from wanting an answer. They'd like to know whether or not we're interested in doing this. And so this is a good opportunity for us, especially on an agenda that didn't have a lot on it, to have some good debriefing time. Talk about what we learned that night in the presentation, what questions have come to your mind in the, 6 days since then, and what more information you'd want, whether it be from the consultant, whether it be from city staff. I know there were some comments that night about, how to pay for it or some other things. Just trying to find out your level of interest in the project and what kind of things you would want to know before you started coming to a decision as to whether to do this.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you, Mayor. I mentioned in our earlier session that I thought maybe a lot more discussion needed to be had about this, and I guess I was thinking that, trying to think of what positive move we could do tonight to resolve some of the questions. And there are a lot of questions about that building. Number one is, what we saw in the presentation was a completed building built to, if not ideal, near ideal standards for giving the police department everything they could possibly ask for in that particular building. And then they showed us the price of it, and most of us gasped. I think that was the case. But what I was hoping that we would also have is a note from the consultant, or an effort by the consultant to tell us that here is the absolute bare minimum that you would have to do to make this a usable and workable facility for the police department. We didn't get that number because it was all based on basically hitting as close to the ideal and doing it only once. I'm thinking that we need to treat this like any other CIP project. We basically need to determine where it fits in our priority list. We need to determine what steps it's going to take to get there in 3-5 years, whatever. And by the way, the library project was the absolute, the absolute picture or textbook process for this. Mr. Stauber was there during that time, and it was, they worked for, I know it was more than 5 years, it was probably like 7 years to get that library built. And they basically had it under the heading of the Blue Sky Project. And basically they found ways every year of picking off one little thing here or one little thing there. Like, okay, we need a study on building materials. Okay, we'll put that in this year's CIP, and next year we'll do something else. I mean, they really, really covered all the bases, and right down to even trying to figure out where the financing was coming from. And with the help of Mrs. Spiros' husband, we set aside borrowing capacity, which was a big deal. It wasn't just the money. It was we let certain projects be paid off before we started dedicating funds to the library and to a new library. We had set a price of $3 million, and basically, I think some of the early ones were like, let's redo the kitchen sinks in gold, that kind of thing. And we ended up saying, like, okay, if you want some of this stuff, you're going to have to go out and raise money for it. And I think the final price was $6 million, and it was split almost evenly down the middle between city money and donated money. That is the kind of thorough, community-wide thought process that I think we need to go through to determine whether or not we need to accept this building. I don't know, I think I said at the other meeting a little while ago that I think the only thing driving this right now is the fact that somebody wants to give us a building. We've talked about the police department. We've had certain studies done for the police department. We've had space study needs. We know there's a need to do something, but where does that fit on our priority list? What are we willing to give up from that CIP list in order to get this? And that's a discussion we have to have. And I'm not prepared to do it tonight, but if I think maybe we ought to set aside some time on our agenda
and ask some hard questions and make some hard decisions. Thank you.
Alderman Stauber.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Wagner, for the comments. What struck me about the presentation, and I give hats off to everyone that brought it to the point where we saw the presentation. It was very well thought out and well done. But what struck me was this relatively slight difference between renovating an old office building and potentially building a new fire police department. I want to say $1.5 million, $2 million. And then I think there was some conversation about longevity of the building. And I don't remember the exact years we could expect the renovated building to last, but I left the meeting thinking that a new building would last much longer than a renovated building. I guess I don't want to be thought of as the person that wants to, spend money on a new building at any opportunity, but I think it'd be money better well spent based on what I've seen so far. So I'm kind of leaning toward new over renovated building. Thank you.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. I had sent a suggestion about opening a time for council members to walk through that building. And also suggested having building inspector, electrical, plumbing, all of them there. What I got back was that they didn't feel that the inspectors basically would have to be there because they supported it. But to me, having those inspectors there to answer questions on the spot, conceptual ideas, all kinds of things, is a very small price to pay when you're looking at renovating a building that size. So if we do go down that road, I will be adamant that we can meet with inspectors when we walk through there, because these are our internal, exceptional people that are very knowledgeable in this and can see things that the average person doesn't. So I'll just leave it there, and I guess we'll follow where it goes from here.
Alderman Spiros.
Thank you. I just want to know if the one thing that wasn't brought up at that meeting is, where's the money coming from? That's the question I need to know. I mean, I believe there's a need. I truly do. And I thought that they did a beautiful job. I'm not sure I agree with Mr. Stauber on the pricing of new versus renovation, because that didn't include the cost of purchasing land. But we didn't talk about the money at all, or where that would come from. And I think that's like the number one most important thing to talk about. So I don't know how many decisions or how we could make a decision without understanding the impact of renovating a building or buying new, either one. And I think that needs a discussion. That's it.
Alderman Weigel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'd echo pretty much everything that's been said so far. And I know that part of the impetus to bring this forward today and get some direction is that we know the offer of the building is not going to be there indefinitely. So we need to make a decision some way, one way or another. That being said, at the meeting last week, it was brought up a couple of things I think are important to answer. Like Ms. Spiros said, how's the funding coming? Where's that coming from? Secondly, are we, tax impact of it? So, I mean, if that building comes off the tax roll, how does that impact our finances with that? Additionally, kind of on the same vein too, the current police station, what happens to that? Can we recoup some money from that as well? And I think a lot of that's really going to impact that final number. Like Mr. Wagner said, it was shocking when you saw the full amount. I don't think everyone was prepared for that, because I think, and I'll admit I'm ignorant on a lot of the building stuff, but I wasn't expecting a number that big. People who do building for a living would have expected that. But seeing that and going, okay, man, it's a lot of money. And then on the heels of just, looking at our budget earlier today, where's that coming from? So I think we need to get some more information, some more answers before we can have that conversation in full. And then secondly, and this is not nearly as urgent, but one of the comments that stuck with me from ADCI was the fact that on average, they were saying about every 30-ish years, you should expect to build a new building. If we know that, we should try to, if possible, build that into whether it's our CIP, whether it's something else. But if it's an upcoming expense that we see in the future, what can we do today to prevent that, so it's not a big ticket item all of a sudden where we have to take out loans or anything else. So I think that's enough for me for today.
Go ahead. Really good comments by everybody. Just want to touch on a couple of things. First of all, going back to what Councilmember O'Reilly said, I didn't mean to be pushing you back from the idea of inspection. I guess I want you to know that they've walked through it a couple times with our staff, and they made a few comments, but they generally find the buildings to be in good condition. Certainly, we'll accommodate whatever you want. But I do think it would be good if any people wanted to have a tour. If there's more than one member of the council that wants to have a tour, that we try and get agreement on one date and time. I think that the police chief and the Parks and Recreation director are willing to make that happen. We just wouldn't want to do it individually for 7 different people. So if there can be some consensus on who would want to do it and when they'd want to do it, certainly have a walk through the building and take a look at it. Secondly, I think Councilmember Wagner makes some really good points about the planning. These projects do take a while to plan out. The one caveat, as was just mentioned a minute ago by, I think, Councilmember Rigel, is that the owner of the property will not hold this indefinitely. They need to know if we're going to do this. Otherwise, they would go ahead and try and find another buyer or do something else with their property rather than wait for us to answer as to our level of interest in it. They're offering to make the donation, but it's something that in the next few months they're going to want an answer on as to whether we're going to do this. Even if we don't have it figured out how it's going to happen and when it's going to take place in terms of our renovation, is this going to be a city project? And then finally, the money thing, great questions about that. I mean, I'll be honest, we had the same reactions at staff level when we first got a little bit of wind in advance that it was going to be in that ballpark of dollar amount. I think a lot of us maybe expected it to be less. It's not my field either. We haven't obviously talked about grants or other types of possibilities. The finance director can work with our financial advisor to get a schedule for what debt would look like, pay for a $13 or $14 million facility, but whether there's opportunities to offset that with other revenues and make it more palatable to the council, we don't really know that yet. Have to dig into what some of those grants or other opportunities might be to try and reduce that overall cost if you wanted to move forward.
Alderman Spiros?
With that said, Steve, how long would that process take for Jennifer to meet with our financial people? Because there is, I think, an expiration date here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jennifer?
I can take it because we have talked about that a little bit, waiting to see what the direction of the council is. I think at our next meeting in 2 weeks, we could come back with a debt schedule showing what a roughly $13 or $14 million facility, how it would be paid for, what it would look like. Again, that's without other revenues coming into the picture to offset. That's no grants, no other supplemental funds. And you could have a vision of that picture a little bit.
Just for the chief, have you looked at other funding sources yet, or have you begun to dig through and try to see what could be a possibility?
There's been some really preliminary stuff because we don't know where we're at right now. One of the things was Commissioner Keogh mentioned the CDA helping a bond, which I know we have to pay back. Another thing, the ADCI did give us a contact with someone who may be able to help us look for grants. He did caution us that it's unlikely that for a public building, a police department, that there'd be a lot available, but our schedules just haven't met up, but I'm going to try to reach out to that ahead of time as well.
We talked a little bit, or the plans talked a little bit about it becoming part of that being a shelter. Would FEMA address any of the funding because if we did put that in there?
I don't know, but it's worth looking into. I don't know what the parameters, sometimes FEMA has some high standards, and the cost to do those high standards sometimes offset what they give. So we just want to make sure that we're not getting caught into that bag of tricks either, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Stauber?
Maybe for our next meeting, it'd be nice to know what the tax benefit would be if that building were taken off the tax rolls. And maybe just a ballpark market analysis of the existing police department. So if we were to entertain selling that for highest best use, we might have an idea what that would be worth.
I think the first of those two will be easier. Certainly, we can look up what the current assessed values of that property and what we would be losing in property taxes if it was taken off the roll. In terms of the value of the existing police station, it's probably hard to say. It was before I came here, but I heard there's a little bit of heartburn about the estimate for the fire station and that we came nowhere near realizing that. You know, that building is carved up in a way that may be difficult for others to use. We can have preliminary review of what the value of that building might be to someone else, but I think that one's going to be a little bit harder to pull off, given the real specific way in which that building is, you know, is carved up. But we can always start the process and see what that might be the case.
Alderman Wagner?
The other thing we need to do is find out from the architects as to whether or not there can be any way at all that this could be done in phases. And so it'd be phased over like 2, 3, 4 years, something like that, before they move, you know, especially if they were going to, two of the things that struck me immediately, number one, one of the cold storage or garage things they had appended to the front of the building. That's something that could be done as a standalone project, could happen as a standalone project. That could be something that would be one of the last phases. Because if I remember correctly, it was their estimate to do that is almost $1 million. So I mean, we could phase the bonding issue so that it wouldn't hit the taxpayers hard all at one time. I mean, there are like 6 different things we can do. The question is that the best use of our money, and is that the best use of our time and resources? And I haven't heard that answer yet. I really haven't.
Yeah, sometimes when you parcel it off into stages like that, you end up paying more in the long run, but maybe it's what you can afford in a pay-as-you-go. I don't know.
And I found one thought that was very odd. Somebody brought up the fact that a new building should last about 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But about 30 years and then build another new building.
Yeah.
But when the gentleman presented it, they told us, and I asked them after the meeting, again, just to make sure, the building that we are looking at buying, the Buffalo building, will last another 30 years. So what's the difference in, I mean, and I'm not discounting at all, Russ, because I know that Jody would I would much rather see a brand new building, because then you could put everything in that you want in the steps that you want to put it in. And they're kind of putting things together almost like a Tinker Toys. Yes, exactly. So it kind of blows my mind when I listen to this, and I understand every 30 years, yeah, that's kind of how the cycle goes. But if we have a building that's there, they're going to give it to us, why would we spend that extra $2 million for the same benefit? Just a thought. And I was actually, yeah, I listened to them and I'm like, wow, that was weird, right?
And that's one of the things that council will have to grapple with in the next few weeks as they discuss this, because it did strike us at staff level as well, that you could get a new building for only $1.5 million, let's say, more than renovating an existing building. And yet they tell us that the existing building is in good, solid condition. So, yeah.
Alderman Weigel?
I would just like to point out one thing too, that technically 2 things. First of all, that the designs or drawings that they presented are very early stages. They were not meant to be, okay, we're close here, we just have to tweak a few things. It's very generic. And frankly, I didn't think it was a time or the place at that meeting, but I'll bring it up here. My understanding is that we asked for 3 different proposals from them specifically. And in one of the pages in the handout, they said, you know, there's a pro and con of each one. I didn't see a pro and con of each one. I saw the first drawing being very much favorable, the rest not as favorable, specifically with the square footage area. And when comparing amounts too, we have to realize too that option 1 that we were looking at compared to option 4, which is a new building. I think it was about 7,000 square feet difference between those two. So all that to say, and it's kind of just to echo what Mr. Wagner was saying here, is that I don't think we're to the stage that we can make a decision just yet. I think we need some more information, tax effects, stuff like that. So can we stomach, potentially having lower tax revenue or a $2 million savings down the road? I don't know. I don't think we're at that point, but I think we should get that information so that at a future date, we can make an informed decision on how best to prevent, any negative tax repercussions on anyone in the city.
Well, here's two things we can do then. Number one, I think staff can start working to try and compile some of this information for the next meeting on October 24th. I'm not sure how far we'll get on a couple of the items, but at least we can bring a report. I think this item needs to be pretty much on every agenda until we, start seeing if there's interest and what level of interest in doing this. Sooner rather than later, because again, the owner of the property would like to know if we're going to pull the trigger. And then secondly, if anybody who's interested beyond Councilmember O'Reilly could let me know, drop me an email, give me a call, and say, yeah, I'd like to be part of the tour. And then, we'll quick find out when people are available, work with Justin or Jody and get a tour set up for people to walk through the building and see it for themselves, if that would be helpful to the council. Those would be my two initial thoughts.
Any other comments? We'll go on to item T, suggested items for future agendas. Okay, go ahead.
I just have one, and it's kind of awkward, but if you're on Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, you know that at every meeting we have the approval of bills. And the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for next Tuesday, we were going to move it up to Monday because of the council members going to the conference for the league. But then we found out we really don't have any items anyway, so we were canceling the meeting for Finance, Budget, and Personnel next week. But we still need a blessing from the elected officials to pay the bills. So what I'd like to do is, with your permission, put the approval of bills at the beginning of the October 24th council meeting to keep the business going, get those creditors paid and move it forward that way. And I'm seeing heads nod, so I'll plan on adding that to the next agenda. Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I now have a place on the Marshfield Utilities Commission, and Mr. Giles has very kindly said that he would take my place because he was on the Utilities Commission. He's willing to take my place on the Fair Commission because I do have quite a few meetings. But I've been informed that that actually has to be approved by council. So I'm wondering if we could put that up on the next agenda.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, we'll adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Assessments related to Adler Road Trail Project and development agreement for sale of a lot in Daniels Addition. We have a motion, but I see, yeah. Oh, okay, I didn't see that. Okay. All those in favor, aye, so we are in closed session. Thank you.